Welcome to another episode of China Update, where I provide you guys with the most up-to-date political, economic and geostrategic analysis on the world's number 2 economy. My name is Tony. Let's jump in.
Okay, happy Thursday everybody. First up, we need an update for the outbreak situation, which has taken a nasty turn in recent days. Sichuan's provincial capital, Chengdu, population 21 million, which implemented a temporary lockdown last week, has once again extended the restrictions. The lockdowns were scheduled to end on Wednesday, that is yesterday, but authorities announced yesterday that they needed to bring cases to zero before they eased things too much. The lockdown is now anticipated to last at least another week. Today, US technology giant Apple announced a new line of iPhones and watches. Fortunately, no iPads or MacBooks were announced, as Chengdu is a major production hub for these products. We remember too that this region around Chengdu is still reeling from an earthquake from earlier this week. Quake survivors must undergo daily COVID-19 testing, and access to earthquake zones have been restricted to rescuers who also have to undergo daily COVID-19 testing. This has sparked a debate across the country this week surrounding what should be done when emergencies arise in locked down regions. State media is nervously reporting that cases are still spreading at the community level in the critical cities of Shanghai and Beijing. The Municipal Health Commission for the capital city reported 14 local confirmed cases on Tuesday, all from schools, and yesterday, Wednesday, this climbed to 21 cases. Shanghai has found 3 community cases in the last few days, but authorities have not announced any large-scale measures. Residents and officials alike are hoping that infections will not grow any further. Tianjin, population 15 million, near Beijing, has announced yet another round of citywide testing starting tomorrow, and new daily cases in Guiyang, population about 5 million, provincial capital of southwestern Guizhou, is now in the hundreds. According to new estimates published by economists from Nomura, 49 cities are now under lockdowns of various degrees, accounting for about a quarter of China's gross domestic product and affecting approximately 280 million people. Now, this does not mean 280 million people are under strict lockdown. It means that restrictions of some sort, including lockdowns, are now directly affecting 280 million people in the country. This is already much higher than the Caixin estimate of 33 cities as of last Saturday. As China moves into its Mid-Autumn Festival this long weekend, we should not expect that too many people will be travelling, especially compared to previous years. Okay, next up, yesterday, Wednesday, Politburo Standing Committee member and officially China's number 3 leader, Zhanshu, met with Russian leader Vladimir Putin at a plenary session of the Eastern Economic Forum. The EEF is an international forum held each year in Vladivostok, Russia, for the purpose of encouraging foreign investment in the so-called Russian Far East. During the meeting, the two sides were very quick to agree on just who is to blame for all the major issues the world is currently facing: the West. Russian media reports that Li expressed that Russia's economy has stood strong in the face of Western sanctions and that Russia is still an important country for international investment cooperation. Meanwhile, Chinese state media writes that Putin expressed at the forum that, quote, "the West is failing, the future is in Asia," end quote, and, quote, "Western nations are hurting everyone, including their own people, in an attempt to preserve global dominance that is slipping from their hands," end quote, finally blaming the current global economic crisis on, quote, "Western elites who would not, or even cannot, acknowledge objective facts," end quote. This made for great content for state media this week, who have published a series of articles on the themes discussed in these statements. Quote, "Under the huge impacts brought about by the sanctions and the major power competition strategy launched by the US and its Western allies, the necessity and importance of the China-Russia cooperation is rising, and the two countries will have to work together to safeguard and reform the international order, while the US is trying to break and reshape one to serve its hegemony," end quote. Meanwhile, there continues to be reports that General Secretary Xi Jinping will meet with Putin in person on the sidelines of the Shanghai Cooperation Organization SCO summit in Uzbekistan next week. If the reports that Xi Jinping is heading to Uzbekistan or Kazakhstan are accurate, it would be the first time the General Secretary has travelled outside the People's Republic of China since the beginning of the pandemic. Analysts are debating what the significance of the trip would be if it goes ahead. For example, quote, Xi's trip to Kazakhstan will project an image of confidence to both domestic and international audiences. Choosing Central Asia as his first official destination in 2 years showed Xi regarded the SCO as a crucial platform to counter the geopolitical pressure from the United States and its allies and securing China's future energy supply. End quote. We should note that Beijing still has not officially confirmed any of the General Secretary's trips. Now, while we're on Russia-China developments, on Tuesday of this week, Russia's state-owned gas giant Gazprom announced that it has signed new agreements with China National Petroleum Corporation related to the so-called Power of Siberia pipeline, and that settlements for the Russian gas to China will now be made in the Russian ruble and the Chinese yuan. Now, speaking of the Chinese yuan, up next, the economy. If you guys are enjoying today's episode of China Update, don't forget to hit the like button. And as always, guys, anyone who wants to go the extra mile and help keep China Update sustainable, if you appreciate what I'm trying to do with the channel and want to help me continue making these for you guys every day, Patreon and Buy Me a Coffee links are in the description below. This is the best way to help me keep China Update subscribers supported and not have to rely primarily on corporate sponsorship. As always, thank you everybody for the ongoing support. For the economy, let's begin with the trade numbers, which some analysts are calling disappointing. In August, China's exports to the United States fell a surprising 3.8% year-on-year, representing the first contraction since May 2020. In a research note, Nomura analysts observed, quote, China's export growth is retreating to its more normal levels after 2 years of exceptional growth, end quote. Exports to the European Union did somewhat better, seeing 11.1% growth year-on-year. Imports weakened further in August, a sign yet again of poor domestic demand, growing only 0.3% year-on-year, down from the 2.3% increase in July and well below the 1.5% forecast by economists polled by US-based Wall Street Journal. Demand is likely to worsen more still in September as lockdowns and zero-COVID restrictions spread. Analysts point out that while China's export growth may have slowed in the last few months, it is still up 7.1% year-on-year in August generally, but exports are not the issue. Domestic demand is. For example, in a note to clients yesterday, Zhang Zhiwei, chief economist at Pinpoint Asset Management, expressed, quote, China needs to rely more on domestic demand than exports, end quote. Also yesterday, Peking University's Michael Pettis wrote, quote, The real problem, which Beijing still seems unable to address, continues to be very weak domestic demand. Imports were barely up year-on-year, rising nominally by 0.3% and almost certainly falling in real terms. This is the third month of surging exports and flat imports. This shows just how terribly weak domestic demand continues to be. Between rising uncertainty, high unemployment, and downward pressure on wages, Chinese households are completely unable to increase their consumption, and with it, their imports. End quote. Meanwhile, Chinese shrinking trade surplus going forward will weigh on the currency, which continues its decline towards the key 7 per dollar level, as the US dollar pushes higher against global peers. Bloomberg's Hong Kong team writes this week that China sent its most powerful signal yet on, quote, its discomfort with the yuan's weakness by setting its reference rate for the currency with the strongest bias on record, end quote. The People's Bank of China set the fix at 454 points stronger than the average estimate in a Bloomberg survey of analysts and traders, the 11th straight day of stronger than expected fixings by the People's Bank of China, and this follows a reduction in foreign currency reserve requirements for financial institutions announced on Monday of this week. Both measures, Bloomberg argues, aimed at propping up the currency. quote, "The Chinese authorities are leaving no doubt about their resolve in dampening the depreciation pressure on the yuan. What is also clear is that the authorities are not seeking to defend any particular level, as the fixings are still being set weaker in the face of dollar strength." End quote. The current consensus among analysts is that Beijing will seek to maintain a stable foreign exchange rate in the lead-up to the ultra-sensitive 20th Party Congress. Okay, that is today's episode of China Update. Thank you so much, everybody, for watching. I'll see you tomorrow.